So the next film we're going to review is Portrait of a Lady on Fire, which is coming out on the 28th in the UK and definitely at Filmhouse. Carice, tell us a little bit about this film.
So Portrait of a Lady on Fire is French auteur Céline Sciamma's fourth written and directed by feature credit to date. It's a departure from her previous thematic trilogy of coming-of-age dramas and has taken a bold new step into the world of period drama. The film opens with Marianne, played by Noémie Merlant, making a journey by boat to the home of Heloise and her mother, Adèle Haenel and Valeria Galino, respectively. Artist Marianne has been tasked with the seemingly impossible job of painting a portrait of Heloise, who has already sent multiple artists home in vain. Heloise's mother has conjured up the smart initiative to have Marianne pose as a mere companion to Heloise and paint the portrait in secret. Heloise herself drifts mysteriously about the airy and empty manor and the island that surrounds, wearing a long hooded cape cloaked from the gaze of Marianne and the audience themselves. When Heloise and Marianne's eyes finally do meet, we are pulled heart first into an honest, complete, and deep-reaching love story that explores female friendship and solidarity just as effectively as it explores love. I'm a big fan of this film. I think I was even more impressed by it than I expected. I think it's like I say, it's a big departure from some of the settings and some of the stories that Céline Sciamma's worked with previously, and it's just a very neat, well-written, well-developed, thoughtful piece of filmmaking. What do you think, Amanda?
No, it grabbed me from the very beginning just because of its beauty. I think the cinematography, I forgot the name of the woman who, Claire Mathon, absolutely stunning. And it made, it is a portrait. It's like a film that made me feel like I was in a portrait, like a Vermeer or something like that. It was just quite absolutely stunning in the colors and whatnot. So, but it was really such a heartfelt film as well. I just loved their story, and it made me cry a little bit. So,
yes, I would admit to crying too. Page 28 to those who know. I'd say that the film is, I hate to use this word, but it has to be used, I think, where the film sort of encroaches upon genius, is how all the different units of meaning in the film are all in direct conversation with each other. Because Marianne is a painter, she's painting Heloise as a subject for a portrait that's going to be sent to a Milanese suitor. So it's entering into an art historical discourse of hiddenness, because if women painters were more prevalent and greater in number, the scenes in the film, the compositions from the film, would be exactly the sort of things that would be adorning the walls of art galleries everywhere. So there's that's a huge thing immediately. But there's also an aspect of hiddenness in the way in which the scenes where they're painting, where Marianne is painting, there's the subject is internalizing the artist as well as the artist internalizing the subject. And we can't not mention that this is a queer lesbian romance. What's the story of queerness in the 18th century as now but the story of being hidden? And that immediately speaks to the sort of consistent trait in the film, which is discussing Orpheus, the story of Orpheus and Eurydice, which is a story of people refusing to be hidden, which is exactly what the film is.
And Serena, what's your thoughts on the film?
Well, I watched it just once, and it happened in London, and during the London Film Festival, and it was such an amazing experience, to be honest. And I think most of all it was because when I was watching the film, I felt like I was kind of represented on screen, and it's something that it never happened to me before. And I mean, it was such a great experience, to be honest. And I remember I just walk out the screen, and I was basically still crying. And I met a friend of mine, and he was like in the same state as mine. And we looked in each other's eyes, and we were like, "Oh my God, what we just witnessed! It was such an amazing film." And so yeah, I mean, everything was great in it. I don't even know what to say, to be honest. But the female gaze, and finally No Man Around. It was such a great film. I mean, and the lesbian love story at the center. It was so incredibly developed, and it felt like so real. And you could almost feel you were together with them. And everything Mark said is right. I mean, women haven't been represented like in arts for so many years, and we're still not really represented right now. And so I mean, everything in there was so political. So not aggressively political, but still political. And it was amazing, an amazing face, to be honest. It was just great.
I also really loved, as you discussed, Mark, and this idea about painting, but also sort of the collaboration of painting. And so for me, it was their relationship building into this beautiful artwork happening that I thought was quite lovely as part of the story.
For sure, and it was great, to be honest, to see finally this kind of the disrupting and dismantling the idea of like the artist and the muse. So finally, the muse is not objectified anymore, and the female gaze is like more gentle than a male gaze, because it doesn't want to exploit the other person, but just it kind of wants to embrace it. And it was, I mean, yeah, as I said, it was just great. I mean, I'm repeating myself. I feel like I'm super dumb, but actually I've vibed better than I thought. And but yeah, it was great.
No, you loved it. I loved it. I didn't have much more other than to say I was absolutely blown away with it. Betty, what were your thoughts of this film?
So I feel like in the last couple of years, and when I say that, I mainly mean the 2010s, there has been, I don't know if I would call it a surge, but it has become a bit more commonplace to create period pieces that include a queer romance in it, or if not a queer romance per se, at least the acknowledgement of the existence of LGBT people. Even films like, say, The Favourite do this, The Handmaiden, which was already mentioned, The Danish Girl, The Imitation Game, films like that. And I think out of all of these films, Portrait of a Lady on Fire is perhaps the most successful in actually portraying a lesbian romance, in the sense that I felt the film was rather simple. I don't think Céline Sciamma really went much further than telling a very simple love story, but in telling it, it was incredibly successful in making it seem very organic and genuine. You feel like you're watching them fall in love in, so-called real time. It's happening in front of your eyes in a way that doesn't seem contrived. It doesn't seem forced. It's not made into this melodramatic, incredibly noble story about two queer people who overcame historical social adversity or anything. They just fell in love, and that goes in various directions that has more to do with their intimate feelings than about this this necessity to create a martyrdom story out of two lesbians, which is something that I really admire the film for. I watched a Q&A with Céline Sciamma, and when asked what prompted her to create the film, she said that first and foremost she wanted to just make a love story, but also make a story about the memory of love, which I thought was very touching, because I think that, without going into too much detail, the film really portrays the sort of emotional, I guess you could call it like a patina kind of feel, the emotional patina of a romance that had a massive influence on you as a person. I also got a little bit choked up, which I have to admire the film for, getting into the frozen cockles of my small black heart. I am very glad that we sort of got into the discussion about the discourse of visuality in the film, because I think most people who write about film will derive this conclusion from any film that's sort of meta in the way that it treats an aesthetic subject. But Portrait of a Lady on Fire, I think, is very upfront with what it's trying to do and the way it's trying to think visuality and representation.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really love what you said about this real-time falling in love, and also the moments of love, from memory to the beginnings of a relationship to what the visual, what the eyes and what happens, and that all of that's captured so effectively, and really, really amazing. Chris, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I guess one other thing that I wanted to say beyond what everyone else has really wonderfully pulled out. As soon as I finished watching this film, the BAFTAs came on, and I flicked over, and it was running through a clips reel for, I think it was the acting award. And this isn't at the discredit of any of those films that were being seen, but what I was struck by is how much dialogue there was in all of those clips that were being shown from these nominees. And it made me sort of realize, in contrast, quite how held back Céline Sciamma is with the dialogue in Portrait of a Lady on Fire. It's a film of lots of body gestures and shared looks between the two leads, but also other characters that surround them. And yeah, and I think that's probably something that adds to what everyone's sort of said in terms of how simple and effective the film is. That she's not got distracted with lengthy exposition, that she's not got distracted with lengthy exposition about what love is and how the characters feel. She just sort of lets the moment and the pauses and the looks kind of speak for themselves.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, we highly unanimously recommend that you go see it when it comes out in theater. So please do.